All righty. Let me share my screen. Okay. What? There we go. All right. So I hope everyone is having a great day. I really appreciate those who are here and those who are watching the replay. I will have this recorded and will share out to anyone who is interested. So this month, obviously being Heart Month, I wanted to talk about when the heart carries what the mind couldn't process. And this is emotional stress, um, where we carry it in our bodies, and why is safety so important. So, heart disease is the number one cause of death for women in the United States. It's also true for men. Heart disease is the number one cause for them as well. Over 60 million, excuse me, 60 million women are living with some form of heart disease. Chronic stress, anxiety, and depression are strongly linked with poorer heart health, and increased cardiovascular risk. Women are so many things to so many people, right? We're daughters, we're moms, we're employees, we're employers, sisters, networking friends, colleagues. And there's a lot of people who want a lot of things from us. And so, with that, women just don't feel stress. We store it. And a lot of that is because we just don't have the time to process stress and feel it. And it's kind of our norm, right? To just go from one thing to the next. And we're thinking 20 steps ahead, and our to do list is 5 million pages. So we don't necessarily feel stress. It's kind of our norm. And so therefore we store it. If we don't feel it or we don't process it, it goes to the back of our minds, and the back of our mind is our spine. When we have an emotion, this always gets a lot of like, what are you talking about? So, an emotion, when you have an emotion, we are designed to process that within 90 seconds. So, something happens, we either feel mad, we're sad, we're frustrated. We are supposed to feel that within 90 seconds and be like, okay, that's done, that's over. Now, what can we do? What can we move on from it? Generally, though, we don't even take those 90 seconds to process. And so that gets stored in the back of our minds, and we get one thing on top of another on top of another. So, where do these emotions go when we don't process them? I already mentioned the spine, but where exactly in our spine does it go? Unprocessed emotions, they just don't vanish. They settle in different parts of our bodies, specifically the thoracic spine, because it sits directly behind our heart. It's where a lot of our emotions go. Certain words I will give you, like abandonment, usually settles between the shoulder blades. Anger usually settles around the kidneys. Guilt doesn't follow this usually with the thoracic area, but guilt sometimes is down in our pelvis area. So there are definitely different places where emotions are stored. There's no like big science to it. It's just over time people talking about, oh yeah, my emotion, I'm feeling this emotion and this is kind of where I feel it. But generally emotions do sit, in our hearts, and it sits in our thoracic spine. I like to talk about this imaginary backpack. So, this imaginary backpack, when we're born kind of gets strapped to our backs. And every time we have some kind of stress, it, processes and it gets stuck into this backpack. So it's like a little pebble. So we go one pebble and then maybe it's a couple pebbles and then we get these big boulders that go into our backpack. And eventually what happens is the backpack gets full. And when it's full of emotional baggage, literally, we have no capacity for anything else like joy. So that's kind of what we're unpacking here is this backpack. When we have that strapped on, we kind of start to hunker over because it's heavy. I remember being in school and I brought all my textbooks home with me and I didn't need them. I just wanted them home. And so that's a lot of weight to put on the spine. And that's kind of how emotional baggage and trauma gets. So that weight changes our posture because our shoulders start to come forward. We fold inward to protect our hearts. And a lot of people, they'll, sit at a desk and they say, oh, yeah, I'm hunched over my desk all day long. But that's stress. It's not necessarily your position, although it can be, you want to sit with your shoulders back, sit up nice and tall. We've all heard it before. But just because you've heard it doesn't mean that you can do it physically because of this backpack that you're carrying. And when we protect our heart too long, it actually impacts our relationships and our health. So if you're protecting your heart and nobody can get in, and maybe you don't even necessarily have self-love, how can you open your heart to other people? How can you love other people when you're so protecting? And health is the same way. All of that weight obviously changes our posture, but it also blocks our brain and our body from communicating properly. We talk about, immune suppression. If you're exhausted all the time, lack of energy, it can heart health, lungs, other areas that it can cause problems. The body will not release without safety. And when I'm talking about safety, I'm not talking about being comfortable. Being comfortable and safety are two very different things. So let me talk about being comfortable for a moment. When you are in what we call our comfort zone, right? You could be doing things that you're good at. You could be doing things maybe you enjoy. It's kind of your routine and you're just in that comfort zone. You're just doing your thing and it's okay. But it doesn't mean that you're safe there physically, emotionally, mentally. Because there could be that comfort zone could be where a lot of those pebbles are being coming from, being stored into that backpack. So it's not necessarily a safe zone as it is a comfortable zone. Safety is having someone who completely supports you, someone who allows you to be completely yourself. Whatever you need to do, it's perfectly fine with them. I always tell my clients here at the Sacred Center of Healing, when you're on my table, I want you to do you. I want you to laugh, cry, scream if you need to. If you feel you need to move, go ahead and move. If you feel like you're going to throw up, there's a bucket under my table. There's always tissues and paper towels as well. And I get some, chuckles when people say, oh, am I going to throw up? I don't know, but I want to create that safety and that security around it in case you do. I want to be here to support you in whatever it is you need to be able to heal on that table. So, comfort zone, think of it as kind of your everyday life, your routine, your habits. You're just doing your thing over here. But that could also be what's causing your stress. Safety is where we heal. Safety is being allowed to completely let go, no judgment, just being you and doing what you need to do. Nature understands this vulnerability. And if you know, I have two dachshunds. They don't look quite like this, but um, nature understands this vulnerability. When you think about it, how many times, if you have pets, how many times do you go to the bathroom and you're not alone, right? Because when you're going to the bathroom, you're in that vulnerable space. And so they sit with you and they like watch and they're protecting you. Also, when their tail is tucked underneath, when they're scared, our tailbones do that exact same thing. So when we are in survival mode, when we are in so much stress that the only thing we can, think about are basic functions like run if you need to run, or freeze, that freeze fight flight mode, getting from bed through our day and back to bed, um, is very important. And that's part of that survival mode. So we are definitely take some of that from nature and understanding that vulnerability. And when you are vulnerable, when you're on the table and you're healing, that's where I come in. I'm that dachshund. I'm the dog. I'm watching to make sure that you're okay. And as I said, we heal in safe presence and not in isolation. This is very important for, we'll get into some other things about other modalities, and I will mention some and not talk about a lot, but it's very difficult to heal in isolation. And what I mean by that is, I hear from a lot of my clients about not being able to meditate. Like they're like, I don't know what to do when I meditate. Do I sit there? Do I hum? Do I listen? What do I do? Because we're not comfortable. We're not safe in isolation, right? That's when our brain starts going at 90 miles an hour and we just feel like we're not safe with our own thoughts. So it's really important to understand that when you're trying to heal, it is okay to find help. A few things to understand how to reconnect with your body. First of all, I want you to understand slowing without guilt is so important. Just slow down. We live in a world where it is 24/7, 365. I think COVID kind of brought about some of the understanding and some of the put a stop to some of these patterns of 24/7. We still have, three shifts. We still have some stores that are open 24/7, things like that. But I think most people have understood or have realized that it's okay to slow down. And I had a friend who said, some of us are just addicted to the hustle. And when she said that, I was like, oh, like that's me. Like I didn't know how to relax before spinal flow. Really. Like I felt like I had to be doing something all the time, or I was lazy, or it just wasn't going to work out, or I wasn't going to get what I wanted. And I've learned that actually the opposite is true. When we slow down, we allow the universe to work in our favor, and then we can attract things. If we're constantly running, the universe can't chase us or won't chase us. It can't catch up to us. And so when you chase something, it runs away from you. So if you're chasing your dreams are going to probably get further and further away, because when you run towards something, generally that runs away. So it's okay to slow down without feeling guilty. Notice your breathing. Like, don't force it, just are you breathing? And I know that sounds strange. And depending on, if you're a singer or a professional speaker or whatever the case may be, you may have been taught, like, breathe from your diaphragm. And that's how I always breathed. Yeah, breathe. You know, from the diaphragm up, I was in choir, I was in chorus. But what I've learned is that so many of us cannot breathe from the capacity of our lungs because of the invisible backpack that's on our back. It's so tight and so tense that our lungs cannot expand within our ribs. So just understanding and noticing where your breath is. I also want you to allow different feelings, different sensations without a story. This is so important. How many times have you like maybe you send a text to somebody and you know you send them a text and they don't respond. And you're like, that's interesting. She normally gets right back to me. Okay, well maybe she's busy. And then like a couple hours go by and still no response. And you're like, oh, well, let me reread what I sent. Maybe I upset her. Maybe I made her mad. Maybe that's why she's not responding. Maybe she's, what if. Now we're adding a story to it. When maybe she was just taking a nap. Or maybe she just forgot her phone for the day. Like there's all kinds of reasons, but right away we make it about us and we make it about, oh, well, she must be mad at me because I said something. Or, you know, we tell stories. And this happens a lot with our childhood. We store a lot of emotional trauma in our bodies from childhood because at the time we didn't have the vocabulary to actually express it. And so when we become adults and we start to get a bigger vocabulary and start thinking about our parents and our childhood, and we're like, oh, well, he did this or she did that, or he didn't love me, you know, whatever your thoughts are, whatever your stories are, take all of that aside and think, okay, well, this was happening, this was happening, this was happening. Oh, I can see all of that emotional trauma. And that's why she or he reacted the way that they did. Okay, I get that. So once we remove and strip stories away, we're left with facts. We're left with truth. And that's what we want because we can deal with that. The stories in our head is constantly usually a negative, and it's like a flywheel. You know, if you fly fish, you let it out and it just, and that's what we tell ourselves. And those stories that we tell ourselves then get connected to our body and the emotions that we're storing in our bodies, which then we think are true because our brain does not understand the word not. So when we're telling stories about, oh, she did this, she did that, I feel unloved, I this, I that, that's what's sticking in there. And then our bodies react to that. So it's just important to be aware of these things and how to reconnect with your body. The body already knows how to heal itself. Okay, you get a cut on your finger. If you do absolutely nothing, it will stop bleeding. It will, you know, heal itself. You might have a scar or something like that, but it will heal, right? What we need to do is stop interrupting that process. And we interrupt that process of a mass amount of different ways, whether it's alcohol, drugs, prescriptions, food we eat, air we breathe, you know, laundry detergents, what we say to ourselves. There's all kinds of ways to interrupt this process. And any blockages that are in our spine, I mean, that the communication pathway is our brain through our nervous system into our bodies. And any blockages that are in our spine or in that nervous system is going to stop or interrupt that communication. So it's really important to understand what we're doing and how this healing process works. And listening is the beginning of that healing. So, one thing, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for just a minute. So, something that I want to talk about is spinal flow, and how does spinal flow help with this? So, one way that spinal flow helps is because of the gentle touch, it will allow the body to come out of that survival mode, relax, and then the body will be able to communicate with the brain and vice versa. The body and the brain will then allow those blockages to release as the body is available. And what I mean by that is if you have, I'm just going to throw a number out, if you have, say, 10 blockages in your spine, your body's probably not going to be able to handle a release of all 10 of those. So it'll work on the ones that it feels appropriate to work on, and then it will release them. And each session will be better and easier as it goes. Okay. I get a lot of people who ask me, like, well, how do you know, like, where the blockages are and how do you feel them? So, one way that I feel them, obviously, with my hands, intuition, and location. So when I feel the spine, I can tell, like, my fingers will automatically stop where there's a blockage. Physical blockages are usually hard. They usually have, for me, they feel smooth but hard. Chemical blockages, anything air we breathe, food we eat, medications, alcohol, all of that, anything chemical that our body can't process, stores in our spine. And so for me, that feels kind of like a marshmallow, like generally on the back of the neck. A lot of people will get that. It's part of the lymphatic system. And so it stores in our fat. And so it'll get like a hump. And I can tell, like, people who clean houses or kennels and things like that, I can tell when they've been around a lot of chemicals because they will come in with this squishiness on the back of their neck. And then spinal flow will help them work that through. The third stressor in our spine, obviously, is emotions. And so for me, that feels like a hard spot, similar to physical, but it feels, I always explain it as like twine. So if you have a piece of twine, it's made up of other little strands. So when I rub my hand across your spine, it's like kind of like boom, 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 boom. Okay. So, and tightness is a big one, especially in that thoracic area, around the kidneys, around the pelvis. Those are the three big areas that I see. Sometimes in the neck and shoulders is tight, but generally it's the thoracic, it's the like around the kidney area, and then the pelvis. Spinal flow is one of the best things that I have found. I tell this story all the time. So if you don't know my background of, I was in the legal field for about 20 years. And in 2024, I decided, after having a really crap beginning to the year, and my boss needing more for me than I was able to give at the time, I decided to leave my job. And I took a year and a half to just sit with myself and heal. I did a lot of meditation. I did Reiki. I did just whatever I could, like movement, sitting out in the sun, things like that, to just what was going to help, what was going to work. And in the spring of 2025, I started seeing some clients and doing Reiki sessions on them. And I felt like I needed to get to the spine. Like I kept feeling, hearing, intuition, whatever, that I needed to get to the spine. And so I started talking to other Reiki masters and asking them, like, do you put your clients on their stomach? Do you work on their back? Facebook apparently heard me, and it sent me an ad for spinal flow and learning this training. And as soon as I saw it, I knew exactly what I had. I knew this was immediately what I needed. So I started the training, started going through it. A friend of mine went with me. I said to her, I was like, we need to do this as quickly as possible. We are the first in this area. I'm the first full time spinal flow practitioner in central Pennsylvania. Um, and so who's certified. So she was like, okay, let's go. So we went to Barcelona, Spain, where we trained for 7 days. It was all hands on at that point. During that process, we had a session, what was called energy release or emotional release. And it's a very specific way of doing spinal flow. And we do it primarily at retreats because you want to have enough time with spinal flow before and after to be prepared for this energy release. And so during the energy release, I felt like a backhoe just took a huge chunk out of my thoracic area, like right behind my heart. Like it just dug the whole thing out. And I was in so much pain and just, I felt terrible. And I thought, there is no way I can take this back to the States and do this to people. Like, what is happening? One thing I learned during the training is that once you are out of survival mode and your higher thinking is able to come back online, basically, if you journal, even if you don't know what to write and just say, like, I don't know what to write, what am I feeling, blah, 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 eventually your hand and your brain will connect and it will start talking to you, even though you don't necessarily know what it all is. So while I was journaling, I wrote the word abandonment. And I had never in 2, 3 years of talk therapy, two different life coaches, like never did that word ever come up. Wasn't even on my radar. And I was like, abandonment. And so when I was 15 months old, my brother was 18 at the time, and he was hit and killed by a drunk driver. And being 15 months old, I didn't have the vocabulary to talk about what I was experiencing. I'm sure, and I don't have memories of this, but I'm sure I saw a lot of people crying. I knew he was gone. You know, a lot of emptiness, a lot of sadness. Mom and dad probably changed as well. Um, but the word abandonment never came up like in my vocabulary. But it made so much sense that specifically because abandonment lives between the shoulder blades, that's where I always had my pain. I would go to the chiropractor, they would adjust me. I was diagnosed in 2010 with fibromyalgia. And when I got adjustments from chiropractors, I would be in bed for 2 or 3 days. And I realized that it's because when they made the adjustment, the emotion of abandonment would go out into my nervous system and shut me down. The body was not ready to process that. Even though I thought in my head I had processed it, I thought I had gotten over that, beyond that, past that, but my body was still storing it. And so as the sessions went on and I had more sessions there, it got better and better and better. And I feel so much lighter because of that. I still get like a little tightness between my shoulders. And so, you work through that spinal flow. But the majority of that pain, my fibromyalgia flares, are gone. This has been an incredible journey for me, especially opening up the Sacred Center of Healing. I've helped so many women, men too. My clients, I primarily work with women 40s and 50s who are in that it's just menopause phase. which it is not just menopause. But I have worked on as young as 3 months old and as old as 85, men and women. So I just wanted to do this workshop, talk about spinal flow, talk about emotions and safety and how it's, so important. I am recording it, so I will put it out to everyone. My goal is to do this once a month, and it'll be on a different topic around emotions and spinal flow. I think we're doing the third Thursday. Normally this will be a Thursday, but I had something else yesterday. Third Thursday of each month at 1 o'clock. Feel free to share this with people. If you have questions, reach out to me. I am located in York, Pennsylvania. You're more than welcome to reach out to me and get on my schedule. If you live in another area, again, reach out to me. I will help you find someone locally. We are trying to spread the word. If you are interested in learning what I do, again, reach out to me and I will help you in any way that I can. Okay. I'm really excited and I hope that you all have a great day. And if, again, any questions, feel free to reach out.